Hello, this is Shri, and today we're reading James and the Giant Peach. We're beginning with chapter 18. Now, if I remember right, they had just landed somewhere with a big splash. They don't know where they're at. Chapter 18. A minute later, they were out in the open, standing on the very top of the peach, near the stem, blinking their eyes in the strong sunlight and peering nervously around. What happened? Where are we? But this is impossible. Unbelievable. Terrible. I told you we were bobbing up and down, the ladybug said. In the middle of the sea, cried James. And indeed they were. A strong current and a high wind had carried the peach so quickly from the shore that already the land was out of sight. All around them lay the vast black ocean, deep and hungry. Little waves were bibbing against the sides of the peach. How did it happen? They cried. Where are the fields? Where are the woods? Where is England? Nobody, not even James, could understand how in the world a thing like this could have come about. Ladies and gentlemen, the old green grasshopper said, trying very hard to keep the fear and disappointment out of his voice. I'm afraid that we find ourselves in a rather awkward situation. Awkward, cried the earthworm. Oh, my old green grasshopper, we're finished. Every one of us is about to perish. I may be blind, you know, but that much I can see quite clearly. Off with my boots, shouted the centipede. I cannot swim with all my boots off. I cannot swim at all, cried the ladybug. Nor can I, wailed the glowworm. Nor I, said the spider. None of the three girls can swim a single stroke. But you won't have to swim, said James calmly. We're floating beautifully, and sooner or later a ship is bound to come along and pick us up. They all stared at him in amazement. Are you quite sure that we are not sinking? The ladybug asked. Of course I'm sure, answered James. Go and look for yourselves. They all ran over to the side of the peach and peered down on the water below. The boy's quite right, the old green grasshopper said. We're floating beautifully. Now we must all sit down and keep perfectly calm. Everything will be all right in the end. What absolute nonsense, cried the earthworm. Nothing is all right in the end, and well you know. Poor earthworm, the ladybug said, whispering to James' ear. He loves to make everything into a disaster. He hates to be happy. He's only happy when he's gloomy. Isn't that odd? But then, I suppose just being an earthworm is enough to make a person pretty gloomy. Don't you agree? If this peach is not going to sink, the earthworm was saying, and if we are not going to be drowned, then every one of us is going to starve to death instead. Do you realize I haven't eaten a thing since yesterday morning? By golly, he's right, cried the centipede. Not for once, the earthworm is right. Of course I am, the earthworm said, and we're all not likely to find anything around here either. We shall get thinner and thinner and thirstier, and we shall die a slow and grisly death from starvation. I'm dying already. I'm slowly shriveling up for want of food. Personally, I'd rather drown. Good heavens, you must be blind, said James. You know very well I'm blind, snapped the earthworm. There's no reason to rub it in. I didn't mean that, James said quickly. I'm sorry, but can't you see? See? Shouted the earthworm. How can I see if I'm blind? James took a deep, slow breath. Can't you realize that we have enough food here to last us weeks and weeks? Where? They said. Where? Why, the peach, of course. Our whole ship is made of food. Jump in, Jehoshaphat, they cried. We never thought of that. My dear James, said the old green grasshopper, laying his front leg affectionately on James' shoulders. I didn't know what we were going to do without you. You're so clever. Ladies and gentlemen, we are saved. Again. We shall starve if we didn't, said the centipede, and we should drown if we do, cried the earthworm. Oh dear, said the old green grasshopper. We're worse off than before. Couldn't we just eat a little bit? Asked Mrs. Spider. I'm so dreadfully hungry. You can all eat all you want, James answered. It would take us weeks and weeks and weeks to make some dent into this enormous peach. Surely you can see that. Good heavens, he's right, cried the old green grasshopper, clapping his hands. It would take us weeks and weeks, and of course it would. But let's not go making lots of holes all over the deck. I think it'd be better if we simply scoop out the tunnel over there, the one that we've come in by. Okay, excellent idea, said the ladybug. What are you looking so worried about, Earthworm? The centipede asked. What's the problem? The problem is, the Earthworm said, the problem is there is no problem. Everybody burst out laughing. Cheer up, Earthworm, they said. Come and eat. And they all went over to the tunnel entrance and began scooping out great chunks of juicy golden flesh-colored peach. Oh, marvelous, said the centipede, stuffing it into his mouth. Delicious, said the old green grasshopper. Just fabulous, said the glowworm. Oh my, said the ladybug primly. What a heavenly taste. She looked at James and she smiled, and James smiled back at her. They sat down on the deck together, and both of them chewing away happily. You know, James, the ladybug said, up until this moment, I have never in my life tasted anything except those tiny green flies that live on rose bushes. They have a perfectly delightful flavor, but this peach is better. Isn't it glorious? The spider said, coming over to join them. Personally, I've always thought that a big, juicy, caught-in-the-web blue bottle was the finest dinner in the world until I tasted this. What a flavor, the centipede cried. It's terrific. Nothing like that. There never has been, and I should know because I have personally tasted all the finest foods in the world. Whereupon, the centipede, with his mouth full of peach, with juicy running down his chin, he suddenly burst into a song. I've eaten many strange and scrumptious dishes in my time, like jellied gnats and dandy prats, and earthquakes and cooked in slime, and mice with rice. They're really nice when roasted in their prime, but don't forget to sprinkle them with a pinch of grime. I've eaten flesh mug burgers by the greatest cooks there are, and scrambled dredge and stink bug eggs and bonnets stewed in a jar, and pails of snails and lizards' tails and beetles by the jar. A beetle is improved just by splashing of vinegar. I've often boiled slobbages, they're grand and eaten when served beside Miss Doodlebugs and curlied slugs. And have you ever tried mosquito toes and wampfish roes, most delicate fried? The only trouble is when they disagree upon my inside. I'm mad for crispy wasp things on a piece of buttered toast, and pickled spines of porcupine, and then a gorgeous roast, a dragon's flesh, well hung but not fresh. It costs $1 at the most, and comes to you in barrels if you order it by the post. I've curved the tasty tentacles of octopi for tea. I like boiled dogs, I love hot frogs, and surely you'll agree a plate of soil with an engine's oil, a super recipe. I barely need to mention that it's practically free. For dinner on my birthday, I'll tell you what I choose. Hot noodles made from poodles, and with a slice of garden hose, and a rather smelly jelly made of armadillo toes. The jelly is delicious, but you have to hold your nose. Now comes the centipede declared, the burden of my speech. These foods are rare beyond compare. Some are out of reach, but there's no doubt I'll go without a million plates of each for one small bite, one tiny bite of this fantastic peach. Everybody was feeling so happy now. The sun was shining brightly out of the soft blue sky, and the day was calm. The giant peach, with the sunlight glinting on its side, was like a massive golden ball sailing across the silver sea. Chapter 19. Look, cried the centipede, just as they were finishing their meal. Look at the funny, thin black thing gliding through the water over there. They all swung around to look. There are 2 of them, said Miss Spider. There are lots of them, said the ladybug. What are they? Asked the earthworm, getting worried. They're some kind of fish, said the green grasshopper. Perhaps they have come along to say hello. They're sharks, cried the earthworm. I bet you anything they've come, and they're sharks, and they have come along to eat us up. What absolute rot, the centipede said, but his voice seemed suddenly to have become quite shaky, and he wasn't laughing. I'm positive they're sharks, said the earthworm. I know that they're sharks. And so, in actual fact, did everybody else, but they were too frightened to admit it. There was a short silence. They all peered down anxiously as the sharks were cruising slowly around the peach. I'm just assuming they are sharks, the centipede said. There still can't possibly be any danger if we stay up here. But even as he spoke, one of those thin black fins suddenly changed directions and came cutting swiftly through the water right up to the side of the peach itself. The shark paused and stared up at the company with small, evil eyes. Go away, they shouted. Go away, you filthy beast! Slowly, almost lazily, the shark opened his mouth, which was big enough to have swallowed a alligator, and made a lunge at the peach. They all watched aghast. And now, as though at a signal from the leader, all the other sharks came swimming in towards the peach and were clustered around it and began attacking it furiously. There must have been 20 or 30 of them at least, all pushing and fighting and lashing their tails and churning the water into a froth. Panic and pandemonium broke out immediately on the top of the peach. Oh, we're finished, cried Miss Spider, wriggling her feet. They'll all eat us up, the whole peach, and then there'll be nothing left to stand on, and then they'll start on us. Oh, she's right, shouted Ladybug. We're lost forever. Oh, I don't want to be eaten, wailed the earthworm. But they will not take me first of all because I'm so fat and juicy and I have no bones. Oh, they will take me first of all because I'm fat and juicy and have no bones. Is there nothing we can do? Asked the ladybug, appealing to James. Surely you can think of a way out of this. Suddenly, they were all looking at James. Think, begged Miss Spider. Think, James, think. Come on, said the centipede. Come on, James. There must be something we can do. Their eyes waited upon him, tense, anxious, pathetically hopeful. Chapter 20. There is something that I believe we must try, James Henry Trotter had said slowly. I'm not saying it'll work. Tell us, cried the earthworm. Tell us quick. We'll try anything you said, said the centipede. But hurry, hurry, hurry. Be quiet and let the boy speak, said the ladybug. Go on, James. They all moved a little closer to him. There was a long pause. Go on, they cried frantically. Go on. And all the time, while they were waiting, they could hear the sharks thrusting around in the water below. It was enough to make anyone frantic. Come on, James, the ladybug said, coaxing him. I'm afraid it's not good after all, the James muttered and shaking his head. I'm sorry. I'm terribly sorry. I forgot. We don't have any string. We need hundreds of yards of strings to make this work. What sort of string? Asked the old green grasshopper. Any sort, just so long as it's strong. But my dear boy, that's exactly what we do have. We've got all you want. Where? How? The silkworm, cried the green grasshopper. Didn't you ever notice the silkworm? She's still down there stairs. She never moves. She just lies there sleeping all day long. But she can easily wake her up and make her spin. But what about me, may I ask, Miss Spider? I can spin just as well as the silkworm. What's more, I can spin patterns. You can make enough between you, said James. As much as you want, and quickly. Of course, of course. And it would be strong? The strongest there is. It's as thick as your finger. But why? What are we going to do? I'm going to lift the peach clear out of the water, announced James firmly. You're mad, cried the earthworm. It's our only chance. The boy's crazy. He was joking. Go on, James, the ladybug said gently. How are you going to do it? Skyhooks, I suppose, jeered the centipede. Seagulls, James answered calmly. The place is full of them. Look up. They all looked up and saw the great mass of seagulls whirling around and around the sky. I'm going to take a long silk string, James went on, and I'm going to loop one around the seagull's neck, and then I'm going to tie the other end to the stem of the peach. And he pointed to the stem of the peach, which was standing like a thick, short mass in the middle of the deck. Then I'm going to get another single and do it again and again and again. Ridiculous, I shouted. Absurd. Excuse me. Poppycock. Balderdash. Madness. And the old green grasshopper said, how can a few seagulls lift an enormous thing like this up into the air, and all of us as well? It'll take hundreds, thousands. There's no shortage of singles, James answered. Look for yourself. We'll probably need 400, 500, 600, maybe even 1,000. I don't know. I shall simply go on hooking them to the stem until we have enough to lift us. We'll be bound to lift us in the end. It's like balloons. You give someone enough balloons to hold, really enough, then up it goes. And the singles has far more lifting power than a balloon. If only we had the time to do it. If only we were not sunk first by those awful sharks. You're absolutely off your head, said the earthworm. How on earth do we propose to get a loop of a string around a seagull's neck? I suppose you're going to fly up there by yourself and catch it. The boy's Dottie, said the centipede. Let him finish, said this ladybug. Go on, James. How would you do it? With bait. Bait? What sort of bait? With a worm, of course. Seagulls love worms, don't you know that? And luckily for us, we have here the fattest, biggest, pinkest, juiciest earthworm in the world. You can stop right there, the earthworm said sharply. That's quite enough. Go on, the others began to grow interested. Go on. The seagulls have already spotted him, James continued. That's why there are so many circling around. They don't dare come down to get him while all of us are here, standing here. So this is it. This is what... Stop! Cried the worm. Stop, stop, stop. I won't have it. I refuse. I... Be quiet, said the centipede. Mind your own business. I like that. My dear earthworm, you're going to be eaten anyways. What's the difference does it make whether it's a shark or a seagull? I won't do it. Why don't you hear the plan at first, said the old green grasshopper. I don't give a hoot what the plan is, cried the earthworm. I'm not going to be pecked to death by a bunch of seagulls. You will be a martyr, said the centipede. I shall respect you for the rest of your life. Or the rest of my life. So will I, said the spider, and your name will be in all the newspaper. Earthworm gives life to save friends. But he won't have to give his life, James told him. Listen to me. This is what we'll do. That's the end of chapter 20.